Thank you for taking time out of your week to chat about your new film, Pray for the Devil, which is out very soon in the UK. Now, you've already directed one film about exorcism, obviously the last Exorcism. What was it about the script for this that made you decide that you wanted to get back into that subgenre?
That subgenre of exorcism was the one thing I never wanted to do again, because I was like, I've done everything I possibly could with it, and so no one ever even sent me those scripts anymore. And then my agent sent me this one, and I called them and I said, that must be a mistake. This is an exorcism script. And they said, you should read this one. It's different, and it is different because it could not be more different from Last Exorcism, because Last Exorcism was based on this question, is this girl crazy or is she possessed? And it takes us 90 minutes to give you the answer, And Pray for the Devil was kind of the opposite. They said, okay, let's just cut out this first 45 minutes that every exorcism possession movie has to go through, where everybody's wondering, is this possession, is it not? Guess what? You bought a ticket for an exorcism movie. It's a possession. We don't have to spend 45 minutes on that. And by freeing that up, suddenly there is so much more time to do the set pieces right, and tell a story with real characters. Normally in a horror movie, sometimes it's like an either or kind of situation, because you might not have time to go into depth so much with everything. And here we could. And then with it being a female protagonist, that changes everything, because as a storyteller, you're always looking for sources of conflict. That's kind of the clay that you're working with, right? So if I have a priest as an exorcist, there is exactly one source of conflict, and that is the priest against the demon. End of story, kind of a thing. But you put a nun in there who says, I have a backstory. My mother was possessed. I have been dealing with this demon all my life, and I recognize this demon. That is the same demon. Let me in there and let me do this. And the patriarchy, the church, is saying, no, no, you can't. So she has to battle for her right to battle the demon in the first place. And then it almost forces her to commit this act of blasphemy, where she is basically saying, you guys, you priests, have been throwing the same Bible verses at the demon for millennia, and it doesn't matter who the demon is, it doesn't matter who the victim is, it's always the same. It doesn't work. You've been making it about you as the knight in shining armor kind of a thing against the demon, and you really like yourselves in that position. How about we go in there and we don't make it about ourselves, and we are focusing on the victim, and we are becoming a coach to the victim who is fighting for their soul, And in order to do that, I, as the nun, I am trusting my own connection with the victim more than I trust God's word, than I trust you priests, and I won't even get distracted by the demon. So all the male entities that are trying to make this all about themselves, she's basically saying, I'll blend you all out. Thank you very much. I'm going to focus on this connection. And that to me made it, it earned this label of strong female protagonist that you always hear as a buzzword, the feminist angle, all that. But then you watch it, and in most movies, I'm thinking, okay, they just replaced a male protagonist with a female protagonist, but the female protagonist is doing exactly the same stuff that a male protagonist would have done. What would be the female angle? How do we earn this label of the strong female protagonist? And that was basically our in, to say she's coming in with an almost secular therapeutic approach, and she is challenging the patriarchy by saying, move over, she's ringing in a new era. And with that becomes more dangerous to the church than any demon or any devil could be, because they are used to fighting demons and devils, very comfortable with that. But the female that suddenly comes in and says, move over, is much more unsettling to the patriarchy.
Yeah, I mean, that in itself, the Bible has a long history with female characters, so that in itself sort of builds nicely into the story as well, because right from Eve, we've been seen as sinful in their eyes, and here she is, trying to change everything. But I guess in a way, it's like the ultimate representation of that female intuition, because like you say, she's just going with her gut. Was it fun to sort of play around with that side instead of just the typical the power of Christ compels you?
Yeah, because it's personal and it's an expression of character. The other stuff everybody is screaming the same Bible verses. It's not an expression of character. You're not learning anything about that particular priest and his fears and his, hopes and his approach, because it's always the same. So we said from the beginning, we have to keep the Latin Bible verse mumbling to an absolute minimum, because it's just like chatter, it's just noise in the background, So it's okay. In our mythology, exorcism very much is a team sport. So they go in together as a team and, kind of play off of each other. And it's okay for one person to mumble Latin in the background, as long as there is a real exchange going on in the foreground, and a real scene and a real conflict and a real expression of character. So that was huge. And then with our lead actress, who is incredible, Jacqueline Byers, she could act you anything with a subtlety and a strength and a desperation. And so to do it with her and to explore these moments with someone who is that capable was a real treat for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot for a lead character. I mean, I think Jackie, she's still relatively young in her career. When did you know that she was Anne, and that she had the talent to convey all of these very complex emotions?
I would love to take credit for finding her so much, but I had nothing to do with it. I was the second director who came on. There was a director on it before me who quit 1 week before pre-production started. And when I came on, they sent me Jackie's casting tape and said, here's an actress, we'd love it if you loved her. And of course, as a director, with my directing ego, choosing the lead actor is my main tool for the entire movie.
Yeah.
There's such an intimacy with that, and we have to get along so well and kind of align our worldview, and I really need to know all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I already don't like her. I haven't even seen the tape. I know the one person in the world that is not going to play this part is this Jackie Byers woman, and I'm clicking play on the QuickTime, and it's 2.5 minutes of the most amazing acting I've ever seen in my life. Like in one take, she shows you the entire range of what that character needs, which is deceptively, it looks as if it's straightforward. It is so difficult for one actress to show that kind of vulnerability, but to not be weak, but to generate through this vulnerability a kind of rage that she then translates into a kick-assness, because the saying always goes, the audience is only going to be as afraid as the protagonist is. So if you send her in there as the strong female protagonist who's just like, I don't care, kick ass, then no one cares, because if she's not afraid, the audience is not afraid. So you need her to be afraid, but on the other hand, you can't have her to be weak, because you're now having the strong female character. So she has to have a vulnerability that makes you afraid for her, and you need to see that she is struggling through it, even though she is terrified. And that is where her strength comes from. And she just conveyed that so well that at the end of those 2.5 minutes, I was like, we'd be crazy not to go with this actress. I don't need to see a single other person. Then we had a Zoom conversation for 2.5 hours where she was just so smart and so insightful and so fun, And I was like, yeah, I want to spend a couple of months with that woman and kind of make this movie. And I've never regretted it for a minute. It was such a joy to work with Jackie. She's incredible.
Yeah. And also on the cast, you've got some horror heavyweights in the form of Virginia Madsen and Colin Salmon. What did they bring to the film? What did they bring to set when they turn up?
Well, they definitely brought that gravitas and that the moral authority. And that was kind of important because they are representatives of the church. And it's very easy in these moments to kind of convey the church as very one-dimensional and very stuck in the Middle Ages. And the script was different in that it was written by a practicing Catholic, So the face of the church was a little more faceted and multi-layered. And Colin and Virginia kind of represented that. Virginia is playing the psychiatrist, this very secular, atheist, agnostic psychiatrist who is still employed by the church to basically challenge everything. And Colin, what we needed for that character and what Colin brings like no one else is, on the one hand, he has to represent the past and the patriarchy and this battle of good and evil that has been raging for millennia and kind of portray that party line. On the other hand, we want to feel that he knows it is time for a change. It is, and that there is an empathy and a seeing our female lead that you just get in very small, subtle moments. And that made it much harder to just dismiss the church, you know, and him as a mentor figure between the two worlds, I thought was a really interesting character. Yeah, we could not have been luckier with either of them. And then to get Ben Cross, you know, who is such a legend of an actor, to play the cardinal, again, just for gravitas, was incredible.
And we mentioned earlier The Last Exorcism. That's become somewhat of quite an iconic sort of modern classic in terms of the exorcism story.
Oh my
but
God.
it looks obviously very different to this film. The story is very different. You know, how conscious a decision was it when you were making things to make sure that you didn't veer too close into what the viewer had seen before?
Well, it's so different because Last Exorcism was a fake documentary, so that informed the style, you know, left, right, and center, which is freeing in a way because nothing has to look pretty, it just has to look real. And it can look ugly and it can look counterintuitive. You know, if a scene calls for that mood, you can do the opposite because that's maybe what it would look like if you just switched on an iPhone or something. And here it was much more classic. So we said from the beginning, we want to pull out all colors to make it look very elegant and then reintroduce colors in a very controlled way. Like if I have a room that is completely void of colors and then I put one red apple on the table, suddenly that apple kind of explodes into your face and suddenly colors have meaning. You know, colors can symbolize certain things. And because it is this battle that has been raging between good and evil, light and shadow, every shade of gray suddenly means something, you know? So it's not by coincidence that our nun is wearing a gray habit, you know, in the beginning, and then turns into the priest out without taking anything away, the black priest outfit, and there's a progression you can build with that stuff. And then the other thing was that we shot in Bulgaria, and when I first talked to the location department in Bulgaria, they said, you realize that we are an Orthodox country. We don't have the Catholic architecture that you're looking for, that the script is calling for. So then we found Sofia is the capital of Bulgaria, it's Sofia University, and we shot 80% of the movie within those walls because it's just the most incredible building, and no matter where you point the camera, that you feel that it's a real world that is lived in, and you know, all that. So that really informed the look, and then it became very much about aesthetics. So it again could not be more different from Last Exorcism in that regard.
And you spent a lot of your career working sort of in and around the horror genre. Is it an area that you want to continue progressing in?
Yeah, originally it wasn't. I was just kind of a dramatic director before Last Exorcism. And then this company that had the script for Last Exorcism said, we've seen your past movies in the kind of fake documentary genre style. Can you make a horror movie in that style? And I had learned by then that in Hollywood, whenever someone asks you, can you do this and this? You just say yes and then think about it later because it's not the moment for self-doubt, you know. So suddenly, Last Exorcism was a good experience because the budget was so low and the expectation was so low. No one knew these actors, no one knew me. We just went to New Orleans with a camera, and we were 3 people in a room making this movie, you know. And then when we came back with the footage and people liked the footage, suddenly it became a bigger thing, and then there was a big marketing campaign. But the making of it was very freeing. But then when it was successful, suddenly you are the horror director, and you can. And Hollywood, I think, because executives get fired so quickly if they have a bomb, you know, they always are looking for some justification. If this movie bombs, let's say Pray for the Devil bombs, they can say, well, that Stamm guy, he did an exorcism movie before that was successful, not my fault that we hired him. Don't fire me, you know? So it would be really hard for me right now to get a high profile, high budget comedy because it would be seen as such a risk, you know? So you can change from one genre to the other, like film by film. I could go horror movie, and the next one is a horror thriller, which I think this is. And then the next one is a dark thriller, dramatic thriller, dark drama, you know. So it would take me 8 movies to slowly venture over to something else. So it's easier for me to look for good scripts within this genre, you know, rather than to try to venture out and kind of confuse Hollywood about what I want to do. And luckily, it is very close to what I want to do anyway. I do want to do thrillers and horror thrillers and that stuff. So I'm quite happy in that area.
Nice. And Pray for the Devil is going to be out in time for Halloween. Why should audiences take a chance on it? Why should they spend their Halloween with this film?
Well, I mean, you're asking the wrong person, but I would say that it is hopefully genuinely scary, which is always the basis for everything. It can be great in all other aspects. If it's not scary, then it fails as a horror movie. So hopefully it is genuinely scary. It delivers all the exorcism set pieces that you come and pay for, and hopefully finds a fresh spin on them all. To make it interesting for people that have seen every other exorcism movie. It has a real story, because my thinking is always, if I stripped out all genre pieces, all horror pieces, would there still be an interesting story with compelling characters that you can, and I think that's very much the case here. And then first and foremost, I think it's the arrival of a fully bona fide movie star in Jackie Byers and in Posey Taylor, who plays the 10-year-old, in an incredible way. A native of Bath, so UK, so to see their performances alone, I think it's worth the 2 hours at the $10 of admission.
Nice. Well, I wish you best of luck with the release.
Thank you so much. Good
Thank you.
talking to you.